Hello everyone, Mr. Love here, coming to you from the Diesel Shop. Today we're going to be doing a little plasma cutting. We're going to be using our Miller Spectrum 875 here. Plasma cutting is pretty cool. There's 4 states of matter. We have a solid, we have liquid, we have gas, and we have plasma. So plasma is made when we either superheat or put electricity to something when it's in a gaseous form. So when we do that, we make little ions. We basically take one of the free floating electrons from the material and we separate it from there. And we could get a lot of energy from that. We could have enough energy where we can instantly melt steel. So we're going to be using our plasma cutter here. We're going to have it connected to compressed air that's connected to our wall over there. So we're going to have to make sure that our compressed air is on. Go into our regulator here. Our regulator is set at 100 PSI. We have a couple basic components here. So we have our little lead here, our little handle. We'll come back to that in a second. We also have our ground clamp that we should be used to by now, same as on our welders and stuff. Our ground clamp we can hook right to the work or to the bench itself. Today we'll just hook it right over here to our bench. Okay, we have our power supply, so 220 volts or 208 here at the Diesel Shop. So we're plugged right into our wall over here, coming out of there. Okay, so we'll take a closer look at our little torch head here, or our little lead, kind of the business end of our plasma cutter here. So you can slowly unscrew this stuff off of here. All comes off as an assembly. Just slowly screw it, pull it off. Just be very careful not to lose any of the parts. These parts are kind of expensive here. Everything just slides right apart here. So you can see it's just kind of a hollow handle there. Electricity flows up to here. The compressed air flows up through here. So we're going to send, when we pull the trigger here, we're going to send electricity through there, completing the circuit with our tip and stuff, our electrode going back to our ground there, flowing through there. We also have these little ports here where the air, our compressed air is going to flow through there, coming out of there. So when the electricity and the air come together, it's going to make super hot ionized air that's actually going to cut our steel for us. And that compressed air is also going to blow it out of our way there. So as we're cutting along, we're going to be cutting through the steel. Electricity is going to be melting it basically, and the air is going to be blowing it out of the way. This here unscrews off of here also. We'll go through all the parts here. So our first component here, for the focus here, this is the little drag shield. So what the drag shield does, it allows us to go right against a piece of steel. So with our drag shield on there, we go right against the steel and actually drag across there as it's running. If we didn't have the drag shield, we'd have to keep it up a certain distance, about 1/8 of an inch all the time. If we're cutting through real thick stuff, we'll also want to keep it up just a little bit further on there, as you see as we're going along. Okay, so okay, so remember the drag shield. Next, we come into the retaining cup. That's just kind of like this ceramic looking piece here where the little drag shield screws onto. So that just screws on there. These are all expendable wearable items here. So as we use this stuff's going to wear out on us. Next, we come to the standard little cutting tip here. So you can see there's not too much to it, just basically a hollow tip that's going to sit down inside there next. That sits all the way down inside there. Okay, next we have our actual electrode. This is what's going to make the contact with the back to the ground there so we complete our circuit so we can get our electricity to flow through there. So that goes in next. This sits all the way down in there also. Then this part here, this is called the swirl ring. This actually makes the little electricity particles actually swirl around in the tip here as it's coming out, kind of make a little twisting effect as it comes out. That's what actually cuts our metal. So just make sure that's in there, nice and snug. Just slide our other pieces in. Actually, make sure you put it in the right way. That's upside down there. Want the little holes facing out. So make sure that's slid down in there. Kind of make sure everything's lined up. And just slowly, carefully roll it together. So make sure it's all the way tightened up there. Everything should just be hand tight. Okay, so let's get suited up. We'll get started here. Just a few things we're going to need to have for PPE here. We're always going to have on our safety glasses, just regular safety glasses on over our eyes, even when we have the shield on. A little dirty here. We'll clean these real quick. Always good to be able to see. So, got our safety glasses on. I'm just wearing my little cap here today. I'm just keep some hot stuff off. You don't really need it for the plasma cutter. Everything's pretty contained, but I always like to keep the sweat and stuff out of my eyes. And these work pretty good underneath the cutting mask and stuff. So I got that on today. We're just going to use our light duty gloves. We're not going to have a lot of heat like with our torch and stuff where it's radiating out. All our heat's going to be directed into one area there. So we'll just have on our nice little light Megan TIG gloves. We'll have our sleeves down. Over the least amount of skin we have exposed is always better. So, okay, looks pretty good. Okay, we'll just have our little cutting mask here. So for the plasma cutter, we only really need a shade 6 or higher. So that's every actual cutting mask or welding helmet, everything we have there meets that criteria. So whatever you're comfortable wearing, your cutting mask or the actual welding helmet, just make sure it's tinted at least shade 6. Okay, everything's good. Okay, let's get over to our piece of metal here. I'm going to readjust the camera so we can see here. We'll make sure we have on our vent system. Going to make sure we have air going to here, at least 100 PSI to our plasma cutter. We're going to turn on our plasma cutter. I got my ground and everything here already on the table. I got my lead in a safe spot. I'm going to turn it on here. I just have an on-off switch. I also have an amperage gauge over here. So most of the stuff we're going to be cutting, we just need to have it about 40 amps. So we'll turn that to 40. There's also another switch down here for cut and gouge. We'll get to that in a second. Right now we have it over in cut mode. So we have it in cut. Says we're all good to go. We have green for power. We have air pressure going there. If we didn't have air pressure, there'd be a yellow light here saying our air pressure is bad. Also, when our stuff starts to wear out, like our cup and everything like that, we'll get a light here saying that's worn out. And down below, the temperature light. If we ever see the temperature light come on, we want to stop, let it cool down a little bit, then start going again. Okay, so I have my little torch tip here. Has a little trigger on here, a little safety trigger. All I'm going to be doing is lifting up on the trigger and then squeezing that. You'll see the plasma arc come out. Also, you'll hear the air coming out of there. The air will keep running even after I take my finger off the trigger until everything stops here, just to make sure everything's cooled down and everything. So just a few seconds, everything cools down, shuts itself off. We don't want to be running this too much without actually contacting the metal here, just because it'll wear out our tip and everything like that. And like I said, this stuff's kind of expensive. We want it to last as long as we can. So take good care of this stuff. Okay, make sure our lead's where we're not going to trip over it as we're going. Move our camera over here. Okay, so I got our camera over at our piece of work here. You can see with this, we can make pretty straight lines. So remember, we always want to get comfortable, keep our arms close to our body if we can. We don't want to be out one-handed, weird angles. We'll start to get pretty sloppy. You'll see here, we can move along pretty quick. We'll contact the little drag tip right against the metal here. We'll pull the trigger, we'll start at the edge. We'll just slowly work our way down, going across there, and then the metal should drop right off when we're done. So put my mask down, we'll try it out here. So cut through it there pretty good, pretty fast. We want to make sure we stay at a nice 90-degree angle here. If we start going way off like that, we're going to lose our contact here. We also want to make sure that we have a good ground to it. So remember, we either ground right to the table or right to the piece of metal. So as long as you're not pulling the trigger, it's okay to set our torch lead down on there. So show you we can also ground right to the metal right here. Okay, coming from the side here. So you see I can move pretty quick, a lot faster than I can with the actual torch. This is pretty thin metal anyways, but even with a little bit thicker stuff, you still move along pretty quick. So I'll finish this off right here, nice straight line. Got that piece I was going to show you. Bring that up down here. Okay. So you can see here, we still get a little bit of slag with this cutting process, but not as much with the torch. We can do a lot straighter line. Look how straight that line is compared to how it would be with the torch. So still get a little slag where we could just, file it down or grind it down. We could also, if we don't want to do straight lines, we could also be more creative like with this. If we had to make a little design there or something, or put out some bolt holes. We'll do a little design on this one. So see here, I got a lot more freedom with this, pretty fast, and I can do a lot more stuff with it. The pieces are going to be warm when you cut them, so don't pick them up without gloves on. Also, a quick little tip if we're doing any precise work. Move our ground down to the other end there. We'd also take some sort of straight edge and put across here if we wanted it to, and then clamp it down. Take our little C-clamps. Down here. Okay, so remember when we do this, we want to make sure we're using our cutting table here that has a little grates in it, or we're hanging off another table. We have our little straight edge clamp down on here, so now I can just follow the straight edge there with the actual plasma cutter, let it rest right against it the whole way down. I could do a nice straight line there. Okay, so gloves on, shield on, start at the edge and just follow it right down. So you can see that was nice and fast, nice straight line there. Got my piece of work. So this is on a little bit longer this time. It's clear the air is still running a little bit longer and knows when it's cool enough to shut itself off. But look at that edge down through there. So that edge there, that's with the plasma cutter. This edge over here is with the cut and torch. You can see a lot more slag, a lot more ripples in there. This one's nice and straight. So there's all the ripples, all the slags, not very straight at all. So this edge here, almost like a factory shear. The cutting torch edge, very rough. Okay. We'll put our clamp back on here. Make sure you have a good ground, otherwise it might not work good for you. Okay, we'll check out our other mode here. So our other mode is for gouging. So we'll switch it over to gouge here. So when we're at gouge, the machine itself is going to regulate the air pressure actually coming out of there. When we gouge, that's when we're going to go on kind of an angle cutting in there. So if we're cutting a really thick piece of metal, or we're starting a hole, like we want to burn some bolt holes in here, we'll start on an angle, and then we'll straighten up to 90 degrees. Okay, so right now, just make a little hole in here. We'll start on an angle, hold up, and go around in a circle. So really quick, just made a little hole right there. Pretty quick. If this was a really thick piece of metal, if I wanted to gouge through it, I would stay on my edge the whole time while I was cutting. That way all the sparks and stuff blow out of the gouged out area. So that's what we'll use when we're cutting really thick pieces, ½ inch or thicker. Anything less than that, we should be able to just come in doing our straight 90-degree cut right across there. Okay, we got a little bit thicker piece of metal here. We'll try out. We're just going to come in right from the end here. Just take a little bit right out of this end. So a little bit thicker here, about a ½ inch thick. So you see, still no problem cutting through it. So if I needed to make a quick bolt hole or something in a piece of metal, plasma cutter is definitely the way to go compared to the torch. Be a lot faster. If I wanted to cut it all the way down through, be a lot faster also. So, try out the plasma cutter, get used to it. Very fast, very efficient. Definitely a great tool to have. Okay, let's get everything shut down here. Okay, so as long as our fan and everything's shut off on our plasma cutter here, we just shut the switch off. We just power down the switch. You'll actually hear the fan and stuff kick on one last time after you power it off. When that's running, just don't unplug it yet. Let it finish its cycle. Then you can unplug it from the wall. We'll wind up our cord here. We got a pretty long cord. We got a 20-foot cord on here, so make sure it's always wound up nice so people don't trip over it. We'll just wind it up, put it on our first little hook here. We'll take our ground clamp off. So again, our ground clamp, we can hook to the table or the work as long as we have good contact. Again, we have a 20-foot lead on here, so we'll wind that up nicely also. And then on the second hook there, if we're going to pull this away from the wall, not in its little cubby hole over here next to the table, we'll wind up the cord also, but this is going to go right next to the table. So we can leave the air and the cord hooked to it. Just make sure it's pushed back in where it goes. We just had it out for the video purpose. So you can see, just sits right next to the table right there. Just keep all the cords and everything nice. We want to shut off our air. Gotta go on a little field trip here. So over here, this is where we shut off our air and turn it on. Right here, it's another regulator, but there's also a regulator built into the back of the plasma cutter station there. So when it's down like that, perpendicular to the pipe, that's when it's off. You still see some pressure in there. This is all blood out of the line. Our line here just runs up and over the wall here, comes down to our little plasma cutter stand there. So make sure the air hose is hooked up. Make sure it's turned on right here. Make sure you see air pressure when it's turned on. Remember, when it's turned on, it's parallel with our pipe here, straight up and down. When it's off, it's at a 90-degree angle to it. So that's all there is to our little Spectrum 875 here. So remember, just on and off, our cut and gouge, our amperage setting here. Most of the time we're going to be at 40 for what we do. If we get up to thicker stuff or really thick gouging, we'll get up to 60. If we're doing really light stuff, you know, aluminum, some really light tin, we'll drop it down even further here on the gauge. So just, you know, have it set to wherever you could do the, you know, best cut at the lowest amperage. That way we won't burn out our tips and stuff quite as fast. Look at the side of it over here. There's a little cubby hole with a couple extra tips and stuff down inside there. So keep track of those. If you look at the side here, it tells you what all the different stuff is called. Our drag shield, retaining cup, our tip, our electrode, our swirl ring, and then just a regular O-ring on there. So that's all there is to it. So stay safe, keep it cool, give her diesel.